After today's class, I will give you an assignment which will consist of this uh, natural convection and this boiling and condensation.
Sir, could you make it like giving it on Friday night so that we can submit on Saturday night, because we are fully loaded with tests in the coming days. So it would be
Fine.
hectic
I
for us
mean,
to.
okay. I mean, I will extend the deadline till say Sunday.
Okay, sir. Yes. Thank you, sir.
Okay. So yeah. So you will have ample time. Since this is a couple of problems taken from the textbook, that would be. But still, I would want you to go through the steps, even if you have the solution manual. Okay. So coming back to the lecture content of today. So in the last class, we concluded our discussion on natural convection. Now, we have seen forced convection, and at the same time, we have seen natural convection. Now, you have understood already that the heat transfer coefficient in natural convection comparatively much lesser than that of the forced convection. But then why the natural convection is needed? The point is that sometimes we cannot avoid a situation where natural convection, you stop it from the natural convection, or there may be some space constraint, or say the mechanical energy constraint where you cannot provide an external source of this flow or the driving force for the flow to happen. So for example, our typical smartphone or say the laptop motherboard or the chips. There nowadays the technology is going into the nano level. The space we are having in the form factor is much thinner and thinner. But without any uh, compromise on the computational power or say the speed or the efficiency of the system. But then again, there is no external, there's, I mean, the possibility of placing another say external fan or something like that in the laptops. Earlier, they used to have a big fans which used to rotate and used to create sound. But even now in a MacBook or in other, say, the Ultra books, you would not hear those noises. There are fans, but the point is that it has now spaced into a certain factor, the form factor, where the convection, the natural convective heat transfer, the natural convective currents are playing a major role in cooling those devices. So, and other biggest the major benefits of this natural convection is that it doesn't create any noise, it doesn't create any vibration, less power consumption. So the malfunctioning of the units that are placed for the forced convections are avoided. So that is why the natural convection is sufficient when we have the low power output devices. We cannot avoid forced convection. We require high power output devices. We cannot avoid fan or blower in the high power output devices, because the point is everything boils down to a scenario where you have the Q convection, the thing that we know is basically HAS T surface minus T infinity. Infinity is of, in case of natural convection, it is of the quiescent fluid, or say it is, far away from the surface, far away from the boundary layer. the bulk temperature. Now here, what we can see, this convection heat transfer coefficient is inversely proportional to the surface temperature. So that means your device can operate at a higher temperature when your this H is typically low, which happens mostly in case of natural convection. And at lower temperature, you have the typical, the H value is higher in case of forced convection. When H is high, that time you can achieve the lower temperature. So natural convection, forced convection, and then if we have substantially high power consumed devices or output devices, there even forced convection may not be sufficient to keep our desired surface temperature, or say the surface temperature at a desired level. So in those cases, we have to explore and exploit the phenomena called boiling and condensation. Okay. Now in boiling and condensation, what happens in addition to this sensible heat transfer? So the heat transfer that we are looking into is typically we have a temperature gradient. So the transfer of heat is happening from the higher temperature surface to the lower temperature surface. This is the sensible heat that we know. In addition to sensible heat, when there is the latent heat of vaporization or condensation is involved, then we call that is the boiling and condensation phenomena. So the point is that you have already gone through the thermodynamic part, right? So parallelly in this semester, you are learning thermodynamics, isn't it? Are you following me?
Yes, sir.
So thermodynamics, you are learning in this semester. Now there you have seen that when the temperature of a liquid at a particular pressure, okay, keeping the pressure constant, if you increase the temperature of the liquid to a temperature called saturation temperature, the boiling occurs. The boiling happens. So similarly, when the temperature of the vapor is lower to this saturation temperature, the condensation happens. Okay. Now, typically, these boiling and condensation are considered as the forms of convective heat transfer because they involve so the fluid motion. Like we have seen during boiling that there are bubbles that form. Say if you try to boil a pool of liquid in a pan, so after a certain time you see there are bubbles that are rising from the bottom, from the heated surface to the interface of this liquid and air. So that means the motion of liquid or fluid is involved. And also, they are dependent on the latent heat of vaporization. Latent heat of vaporization. The liquid that is we are boiling or condensing, as well as the term called the surface tension, or the sigma we call. Because this surface tension actually matters at the interface when the bubbles come out of the interface. Because due to this surface tension force, the bubble will try to retain its size. Okay, but eventually, with increasing heat, this surface tension decreases, and then this bubble coalesces or bursts. So the point is that we have to maintain certain temperature difference between the surface and the saturation temperature for the effective heat transfer to happen. Although this involves the latent heat of vaporization, there must be some sensible temperature difference in order to happen this phenomenon. So there are different types of boiling that we will discuss today. But before that, say we have heard a term called evaporation. Okay, we have heard a term, we say that evaporation. And then also we are saying that there is boiling. So what are the difference in these two phenomena? In both the cases, water basically vaporizes. So boiling is basically liquid to vapor phase change. In evaporation also similar thing happens, that the water evaporates and goes into the gaseous state. The point is, the evaporation happens at the liquid gas interface, or say the liquid vapor interface. So for example, water in a pond or lake at atmospheric say temperature, that is say 20-25 degrees centigrade, room temperature, atmospheric pressure. Okay, now the point is here, yet water will evaporate to air even at room temperature if the relative humidity, the percentage relative humidity is sufficiently low. Say around 60% relative humidity and at 20 degrees centigrade, water evaporates. Because the saturation pressure of water at this 20 degrees centigrade is around 2.3 kilopascal. But the vapor pressure of air at this 20 degrees centigrade and 60% relative humidity, it is in the range of 14 kilopascal. So evaporation examples are several things are there. For example, evaporations are say, including drying of clothes. Okay, say evaporation includes cooling tower. Okay, waste heat rejection in cooling tower. So when our body sweats, and after that when we cool down, that is also evaporation of sweats from our skin. But boiling, it occurs at the solid-liquid interface. The boiling happens at the solid-liquid interface. When the liquid, you take it in contact with the surface that is maintained at a temperature sufficiently above its saturation temperature, is TA. Or if I say it is T saturation and the surface temperature is TA, then it is this condition where the boiling triggers. So for example, atmospheric pressure, liquid water, if you bring it in contact with a solid surface that is at 110 degrees centigrade, it will boil because the saturation temperature of water at 1 atmosphere is 100 degrees centigrade. Now this boiling process, you can characterize it by looking at the phenomena, because there will be rapid formation of vapor bubbles that starts from the solid liquid interface. It detaches from there and then they comes up. Okay, when they retain, actually grows they grow in a bigger size. It's not all bubbles will come up, but when they are sufficiently bigger in size, and this surface tension force and the buoyancy force are in a comparative magnitude. Okay, so under several constraints, they actually come up to the this gas liquid interface. Gas liquid interface, remember, it starts from the solid liquid interface and then they come up. So say for example, when we boil water in a pan, that we have seen a typical example of boiling, the water, we cannot say it's boiling until we see the bubbles are rising to the top. Until some bubbles are there or it's rising to the top, we typically do not say that this water is boiling. Okay, so boiling basically is a very complicated phenomena because there involve large number of system variables or the process variables that are involved, and it's a complex motion that is convoluted by the presence of several bubbles that are forming and their growth. So similar to our previous understanding that Q dot boiling is basically H into Ts minus T saturation. This Ts minus T saturation in case of this boiling is called the del T excess. Watt per meter square. This is called the excess temperature. So this is the excess of the surface temperature above the saturation temperature of the fluid. So in convection processes, we have seen typically several parameters that are involved are, say, the density, viscosity, thermal conductivity, Cp, etc. In addition to those, here we have the latent heat of vaporization, surface tension. Okay, these are additionally involved. Now, the point is that the surface tension, as I mentioned, decreases with increasing the temperature and it becomes zero at a critical temperature. So that is why there is no bubble during boiling at supercritical temperature and pressure. This surface tension has a unit of Newton per meter. Now, this boiling phenomena is basically not an equilibrium situation, or it doesn't happen in equilibrium condition. Okay, so the point is that the temperature and pressure of a vapor in a bubble is usually different than that of the liquid. So there exists some pressure difference between the liquid and vapor, which is balanced by this surface tension. So inside a pool, when you have a bubble, there exists pressure difference, and this pressure difference is balanced by the surface tension. And so the temperature difference between the vapor bubble, the vapor inside this bubble, and the bulk liquid or the surrounding liquid is basically the driving force for heat transfer between two phases, the vapor and the liquid. So when you have liquid at lower temperature than that of the bubble, the heat will be transferred from bubble into the liquid. So what will happen? Some vapor inside the bubble will then condense, and then the bubble will collapse eventually. And if the liquid is at higher temperature than the bubble, then the heat will be transferred from the liquid to the bubble, which will help the bubble to grow and rise to the top of this pool of the liquid or the fluid, and that then it will come up towards this gas or the vapor liquid. So here typically the gas liquid interface. So the boiling, that is this whole phenomena, is basically divided or classified at two types of boiling. One is called the pool boiling. The other is called the flow boiling. Film boiling is a part of the pool boiling. We'll come to that. So pool boiling and flow boiling. Pool boiling is what we call when there is no bulk motion of the flow. There is no bulk fluid motion, flow basically. But in flow boiling, there is the boiling, the forced convection assisted boiling. You can think it of in this way. The flow boiling is basically the forced convection induced boiling. So that means there is the bulk movement of the fluid is there along with the boiling. So that means in pool boiling, you have the liquid as stationary. A typical example is that a pool of liquid in a pan you are heating on a hot plate. So there are these vapor streams up there at the top, and these are the vapor bubbles. So in pool boiling, the fluid is stationary. There is no bulk motion or the motion of the bulk fluid. Okay, so in case of flow boiling, the kind of a scenario, you have a pipe, the vapor bubbles are like this, the liquid layer is something like this, the liquid is also moving and the liquid is also flowing basically along with the heating that is happening on the surfaces of these tubes. This is called the flow boiling. Two types of boiling you can see. Okay, so when the fluid is stationary, that means the motion of the fluid, because there is boiling happening, so there is internal motion of the vapor bubble. But this is mainly due to the natural convection current. For that, the motion of bubbles you can visualize. And the natural convection is dominated by the buoyancy force. Now, when there is flow boiling, you need an external pump to have this driving force on the fluid so that it moves. That means there we have forced convection and other convective effect on the boiling. Now, this cool and flow boiling, these two phenomena can further be categorized in two different types of boiling. One is called the subcooled boiling. The other one is called the saturated boiling. So subcooled, or you can think of this as local, saturated or bulk. So subcooled or local boiling happens when the temperature of the bulk fluid is below the saturation temperature. And the other case, for the saturated case, the temperature of the liquid, the bulk liquid, is at the saturation temperature. So what happens, say when you start heating a pool of liquid, for example, here in this case, what happens initially, bubbles will be confined to a very thin region or narrow region near the hot plate. Say around in this, just near the surface. Okay, because what happens, this is the place which is adjacent to our hot plate, which is say this one, the blue surface is our hot plate. Okay, and this portion only comes just above its saturation temperature, but the bulk fluid remained at a temperature which is lower than the saturation temperature. So such kind of subcooled or local boiling you would find when you have the early stages of boiling. Now, as the bubble appears in this thin region, what will happen? They will try to move away from the hot surface, and immediately those places will be replenished by the surrounding fluid or the liquid. So those positions should be cooler immediately by the cooler liquid current. And then what happens? The bulk of the liquid that is at a lower temperature slowly comes to a temperature that is now nearer to the saturation temperature. So basically, in this early stages, when these vapor droplets or the vapor bubbles are formed, this you can think of as a pocket of energy that is moving in order to bring the temperature of the bulk fluid to a saturation temperature, provided it is exposed or it has a long time exposure. So until then, what you have is that the bulk fluid temperature is cooler than the saturation temperature or lower than the saturation temperature, and that time this boiling phenomena is called the subcooled or local boiling. And when all the fluid or all the portion everywhere it reaches a saturation temperature, you would typically not see any say bubble that rises to the top. That is the saturated boiling. So the point is that why we are categorizing such boiling types, because every boiling type has its own capacity of transferring the heat. The amount of heat that can be transferred at its peak performance level or at its best. Okay, so but the point is that although it is very frequently occurring phenomena, boiling, and its opposite is the condensation, it is still the most unresolved part, I would say, in this whole heat transfer. Still several research are being done in order to understand this type of boiling and how to enhance further its capacity of heat transfer or efficiency of heat transfer. So what happens, because now you understand this, although these are the classical subjects, but lately, that is in 19, why I am mentioning this thing, the year that you would understand that how late the boiling curve has been proposed. So around this 1934, okay, Nukiyama proposed and did an experiment and proposed a boiling curve that shows we have different boiling regimes or regimes. Okay, so the regime, it looked like something. Let me schematically draw this. So we have this is Q dot boiling, and this is the del T excess, which is the temperature difference between the surface and the saturation temperature in degrees centigrade. So there it has been seen that we typically have So say if I mark this as point A, point B, point C, point D, and say here we give a point E. So typical, say water. Okay, these are not to scale, but you have say around 5, 10, 30. Say here we have 120,000, something like this. And we have here certain values that is in watt per meter square. So what happens that when say water starts to boil or you start heating pure water, we find different boiling regimes. Now typically what happens for a pure substance at a particular pressure, it starts to boil when it reaches its saturation temperature at that pressure. But usually what happens that we do not see any bubble that forms in this heating process, and I mean until it reaches that point. Okay, so until the liquid is heated few degrees above that saturation temperature, say around 2 to say 5 degrees for water. So the liquid we typically say is slightly superheated in that case. So that means from here to point A, it is typically the natural convection that happens. So the natural convection contributes to the boiling and it is dominant till this part. At point A, first bubble starts forming. The first bubble that should initiate after or say at point A in this boiling curve. And that happens at certain preferential site of this heating surface. And then what happens? The bubbles form, basically the multiple bubbles form at an increased rate and in number from different positions of the surfaces. So we move along till the point the C. This point, so this whole region, we say the nucleate boiling. We say it is nucleate boiling because the nucleation happens of the vapor bubbles. In particular region A to B, okay, we see there are some isolated bubbles. Isolated bubbles at different positions or the different area of the heated surface. Now these bubbles quickly vanishes as they separate or as they emerge from the surface. So as soon as they come out from this heated surface, they typically vanishes in this region. And that is the slightly excess temperature in between 5 to 10 degrees centigrade for water. Okay, and then immediately whenever it rises from its position, immediately the surrounding liquid fills up those places, the cooler liquid from its vicinity, and this process continues. So in the region B to C, what happens when we increase the excess temperature further, we increase the surface temperature, the heating surface temperature further, the bubbles now forms in multiple locations in large number. So the nucleation site increases, the number of nucleation sites. And there would be, say, kind of a continuous column of bubbles. You see this kind of a thing when the bubble happens during the water boiling in a kettle or a pan during making your tea. You see that there is now a column of bubbles that are rising. That still comes under the bubble regime or the boiling regime called the nucleate boiling. And then at this large value of Txs, the rate of evaporation from the heated surface reaches a maximum value or such a high value that the heated surface is now covered by the bubble. The heated surface, this red portions in this figure would be now covered by this column of liquid bubbles, and it would be covered by the vapors, the vapor bubble. So what it means that when a surface is covered by multiple bubbles or a thin layer of bubbles that is of vapor, what happens? The surrounding liquid, the liquid what is there, now that cannot come in contact with the surface, heating surface. So it kind of acts as a blanket or insulation that deters this liquid to come in contact to the heating surface. So what means it reaches a critical point at C, and then this Q dot boiling or the heat flux immediately decreases. The high rate of heat transfer we can achieve at this peak of this nucleate boiling. And here, let me tell you that in the flow boiling, we have a high rate of heat transfer than the C. So say the point is equal to C here, E is mentioned here. So the point is that we reach a point C where we have a critical or maximum heat flux. So the high heat transfer rate can be achieved at the end of this curve, which is at C. And then the transition boiling occurs, that is from C to D. Now, since the surface is covered by the vapor film, we have low thermal conductivity of the vapor, that is compared to the liquid, because it is kind of air we have and which is a good insulator. So what happens? Then it immediately decreases. So there we call this as a transition region, because from point D, this nucleate boiling converts to film boiling. It's called the film boiling region. We have a thin film of vapor surrounding the solid surface that is nearer to the heating surface. So from nucleate boiling, it quickly converts to the film boiling. And this is why this region is called the transition region of the transition boiling. So typically this part is avoided. It is best to operate in the nucleate boiling region or the regime, because this requires, say, a slight excess temperature. So 5, 10, 30 max for water. If you have the excess temperature of 30, you basically get the peak of nucleate boiling. Okay. Now in the range of this film boiling, that is, if we go from point D, where you have the lowest heat flask, we call this point as Leidenfrost of frost point. Leidenfrost point, after the name of the scientist, J.C. Leidenfrost, who actually observed this thing in way back in 1756. That what he observed is that, I mean, not this phenomena. This phenomena was observed by Nokiyama, but Leidenfrost observed that when you place a water droplet on a very highly heated surface, the water droplet jumps around. You saw that phenomena. When you place a water droplet on a high, heated surface on a frying pan, which is at sufficiently high temperature, and if you put a water droplet, it immediately jumps. And then slowly it boils away. So this phenomena was observed by Leidenfrost. And this point was named after him, that this is the point D, is the Leidenfrost point. So this layer of vapor film is responsible for such low heat transfer rate in the film boiling region. And then the heat transfer rate increases as you increase the excess temperature. And see, the representative number that I have written here, it's from 120 to 1000. Within such a gap, you have a sufficient increase, or the rate of increase, you look at the numbers. That at 1000 excess temperature, you possibly will have the point E, which you reached in nucleate boiling with the excess temperature of 30. I hope you are getting the point. And that is why later I draw a line in order to show you that the point C and point E is at a similar level of having the same heat flask. But to reach C under the nucleate boiling, you needed an excess temperature of 30, around 30 degrees for water, whereas again from the lowest, the Leidenfrost point, to the similar magnitude of heat flask in film boiling, you require around 1000 degree of excess temperature. Okay, so it requires a very, very high temperature. And that is why we have to be very cautious while operating in the film boiling region, because the container may melt in which you are boiling the fluid. So there can be chances of burnout. And that is why it is very dangerous to operate in the film boiling region, because you require such a high excess temperature. Excess temperature is nothing but, again, remember that it is T minus T saturation. It requires 1000 for water in the film boiling to reach the same maximum heat flux that you got in nucleate boiling. Okay, so the point is that we have now this burnout phenomena. This burnout phenomena can also be explained in say in a different way as well. That if we try to move beyond this point C, where this maximum heat transfer is occurring, we have to increase the surface temperature. So to increase the surface temperature, we have to increase the heat flux. Okay, but the temperature already reached a point in which no longer it can rise. So the heat supplied has to be transferred to the fluid steadily. Now at this point E on this boiling curve, which corresponds to a very high surface temperature. Now the point is that if we try to increase the heat flux beyond this Q max, that may cause a scenario that the boiling curve jumps, you jump from suddenly point C to E. And which causes a catastrophic failure of this burnout phenomena. This sudden temperature jump from here to here in order to have this same Q max can cause several safety issues. Now, these are the all types of boiling that we have seen. But then what is the utility of these understandings in calculating the overall heat transfer or the overall heat transfer rate so as to the Nusselt number? Now, in all the cases, typically what happens, this Nusselt number in boiling is a function of several things that can be clubbed together, okay, that are a function of Prandtl number. We have the Grashof number, L cube. We have one term called the Jacob number. I'm explaining that. What is that? This is then Bond number. So we are introducing two new dimensionless numbers here. So this kind of parameters would be there, where Jacob number is Cp del T by H. It involves the latent heat of vaporization. The Bond number involves rho L minus rho V L square by sigma. So it involves several non-dimensional parameters, including two newly introduced terms, the Jacob number and Bond number. So which are, Jacob number is basically the ratio of the sensible heat or sensible energy absorbed by the liquid to the latent energy absorbed by the liquid during condensation or boiling. So it is the ratio of sensible to the latent energy absorbed or released by the liquid. And the Bond number is the ratio of buoyancy force to the surface tension force. So now, based on this understanding that we have explained here, several scientists and researchers have come up with the correlation for Nusselt number, or even directly for heat transfer, this rate of heat transfer boiling, based on these parameters. Several correlations are available at different boiling regimes. And that is why we understood the different boiling regimes at first. And now the rest happens to be the consultation with the reference book in order to pick the appropriate correlation to calculate Q dot for that particular operation or process condition. I will stop here today and tomorrow we'll continue from here. So, but if you have any question till this step, feel free to ask any question.